So I love this um, park because I've been in here almost weekly and I find new trails and roads through it. You think you've seen it all, and then you go, whoa, this park's bigger than I thought it was. It has more views than I thought it had. I also saw a deer here, lots of interesting birds of prey and other birds, hedgehogs. It's just a pleasure.
Visually, it helps. You can find me on YouTube at Academic Agent. Just search for it; I'll come up. I think currently I've got my avatar is George Sanders originally from the film All About Eve, but over time people make memes and things.
Okay, that's what I was trying to tell you when I was on my walk. I was listening to Alex Kaschuta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. I think she's Romanian, and she sounds like she spent time in North America and she used to live in London. She has an interesting podcast called Subversive with Alex Kaschuta. I listened to her podcast today with Neema Parvini and found it quite interesting. He seems like a very interesting guy. These people are academics who really understand the literature that they've been focused on. Not to be trifled with, he wrote a book called Shakespeare and Cognition, which sounds extremely interesting. I'm going to definitely read that. And he has a website called Academic Agency where he teaches foundations of entrepreneurship, politics, economics, trivium research. It's not cheap, £750. You got to really want it, people. Politics, economics, and research, £550. But you know, he has to make a living. And it's probably worth it, but I'm going to get to know him a little bit more before I invest. The reason I'm interested in people like this is because as things inevitably change and break down, because I don't have a whole lot of faith in the sovereign man type of thing, or the singularity, or pure technocracy, or the kind of a liberal democracy that we've seen play out over the last 20 or 30 years, where it just seems like a big scam, a big neoliberal scam that the players are invested in. I just, see a lot of, people are doing better, just like Alex was saying in the podcast in Romania. It's better than perhaps it was at some period of time. But still, it seems like the people who get shafted, who get wrecked and destroyed, are just common folks like us, while the players skate time and time again. I don't understand Parvini's attraction to Trump, because he's obviously an idiot in my book, couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag. So you have to look at who in his group are using him for their ends, and are they competent? And Parvini doesn't think they are, because he thinks the right is incompetent, unable to fight a battle. So this is the new right kind of thing. Don't lump it in with Nazis and fascism and alt-right and militia groups and stuff. It's not that. It's far, far more connected to traditional ways of doing things, whether or not, what kind of progressive you may be. I mean, I think there can be different types of people who believe in different kinds of progress. And sometimes the progress that we see or feel, maybe it's like just the gadgets and nothing else is really going anywhere, So even on leftish type projects, people are concerned with the lack of spirituality or meaning making, with the sense making, and on and on. So there's definitely a hole there concerning humanity, our humanity, and things are being left out by all sides, forgotten. And of course, I do agree with their perspective on power. Power tends to, want power and to assert its power. So what kind of power do you want to be asserted? And is it going to be good for you as a common pleb or prole? Yeah, it's complicated, and I don't have a position, and I'm not labeling myself, but I think their thinking is fascinating. And if you've delved into the left thinking for a while, like I have, and come away kind of like blah, well, so what? I think you have to look at both sides, all sides, basically, the whole spectrum, and then think, is any of it going to be effective in the face of how we manage materials on this planet? To what ends? Consumerism, different kinds of economic growth, culture wars, all these cycles that we're going through in the light of super technologies that are coming along, really destructive ways of making war, existential threats all over the place that people tend to not care about that much because they're too busy spending all their caloric and emotional energy just trying to get by or to virtue signal or compete in the market of, hip stuff. It's kind of hard to pay attention to what's going on with all the crazy fire hose information garbage from all sides hitting you all the time. It's hard to get your orientation. And once you do stubbornly decide to adhere to something, you can often get fooled by that as well. So whatever this, I think the trivium is an interesting thing because, yeah, this basic education in the liberal arts, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, he made a point that they, or the people in power, don't want us to have those skills because if we did, we might not, put up with their bullshit. I do agree that, if we had a certain kind of education, we would be less vulnerable to bullshit, and we would be higher level agents. We would have more agency and personal sovereignty, and we could probably figure out, how to organize and do things that were more in our interest. Of course, it's a big thing, whose interests and what are those interests competing with, and so on and so forth. And how far do you have to go to keep everyone in line? I experienced traditional culture in Ireland, and I also experienced the desire for people to go beyond traditional culture for various reasons, or a certain kind of Catholic traditionalism in Ireland, and so on. And also I was in the swinging 70s, and I'm a boomer, but I'm not on pause. I'm not pausing for anything because I have a lot to learn. My cup will never be full. It will never be spilling over. I'm going to die ignorant, even if I live another 20 years, Oh, please. So I think it's interesting stuff. I would definitely encourage people to listen to people from the New Right, read some of their things, and then critique it if you must, if you feel compelled to, or just understand that these people aren't evil, crazy lunatics. They're not fools. They're not, dumb. And, a lot of the people on the left that I've read, I just wound up shaking my head and going, oh, so what? It didn't hit me. I love history, as you know, so I read a lot in that, but I also like the sciences. We're not talking about scientism or technocracy. We're just talking about like knowing how things work, right? How that plane gets off the ground, and joules of energy, and how much we need just to live a normal consumer life in the United States versus somebody in Gambia, for example, or Indonesia. And whether or not we're all going to be able to have that kind of lifestyle or not. And then are some people going to say, well, it's divine rights that a certain type of person in the world needs to inherit and exploit all the materials on the planet, and not those other guys because they're not worthy of it. You know what I'm talking about. Or if we're all going to have to figure out a way to have our traditional worlds and manage our resources better for the collective or commons, right? Or maybe that's not possible. There are all these kind of theories that I think are erroneous about, the great replacement and all that kind of stuff. I don't see how we manage to have a nice world if we're going to think that way. Parvini is a family man. He's stuck in England because he's a family man in England. I'm sure that even if you think that you either have to have a revolution or you have to see the whole system collapse before something better can come, when you think like that, I don't think you want the world to collapse while your daughter's a young girl, because it's not going to be a comfy world for her to grow up in. Things tend to get really violent and really ugly. People who critique Black Lives Matter and all that kind of thing, defund the police. No, right? Because chaos in the streets isn't good. Corrupt police aren't good either. But there has to be some rational and careful balance there. So yeah, try to fix things as best you can, or push them in a direction that you think is better. If everything does just break down, it's going to be pretty ugly, but it might break down anyway. Circumstances under the climate situation and other things might just make that so. There still could be a nuclear war. That would help hasten the breakdown. But what comes after it? Something worse maybe. You don't know. It's unpredictable. You have no crystal ball. You're not psychic. So maybe you have faith that, Jesus is coming and so on and so forth. With nice, good for you. Or that you've been a good Buddhist and you're going to be free from the cycle of birth and death, or whatever you think. That's fine. And if you're comfortable in that belief, good for you. Must be nice. But so many things are uncertain and unpredictable that it's kind of scary for me to think about, like, yeah, just have him come in, bull in a china shop, tear the whole damn thing, Steve Bannon type of thing. And then we can build it up. Who's we? Is your in-group that good? And is everybody else going to stand for it? Alt-right India, alt-right China, alt-right Mexico, alt-right whatever. Not to mention the people in your own country. Are they all going to stand for it? Yeah, okay, time to go that direction now. We tried the other one. And in the meantime, we're all pretty spoiled. So we're all pretty fortunate. People like me, anyway. I admit it. But a lot of people aren't. And what are we going to do to help them? If you're alt-right or new trad or whatever, or, you know, wonderful left, what are you going to do? I don't mind if the robots do all the shit work and I can focus on studying Aristotle, learning how to play the lute and putting on Shakespeare plays in the back field down here. Be fine with me. Universal basic, yeah, I can live. But as I've heard somebody say, at the end of the day, somebody has to do the dishes, right? Yeah, it's a feminist talking. Oops. But it's true. You know, some woman's gonna have the baby and nurture that child, and somebody's gonna wash the dishes, and some man's gonna have to get his dirty little hands filthy dirty. You can't get away from being human. So if you try to liquefy everything or wash everything ideologically or technically, at the end of the day, you're still a human being who lives in the natural world. And we have limitations and constraints. And it behooves us to understand that to some degree. Anyway, I appreciate these guys, and I appreciate Alex, and I'm enjoying approaching things from their perspective. I encourage you to do that too. Do the Daniel Schmachtenberger thing and be generous. Give people a little bit of, you know, just suspend your doubt a bit and try to look to see where they're thinking things through clearly and what you can get out of that. All right. Thank you. Have a great week. William T. out.